Good day, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the Pulse of High Performance podcast. I am your host, Seth Davies, and I'm excited today to be joined by a friend of Competitive Solutions, Tim Newhard. Tim is someone that we have worked with at another company, and now he has transitioned from the West Coast, Pacific Northwest. He's over in Florida now in Jacksonville working for a company called RailPros. And he is Vice President of Learning and Media Services there at RailPros. And so, Tim, welcome to the podcast. Glad we could find a time to do it. And I know you said 12 is your lucky number. So episode 12, we're glad to have you here.
It's our lucky number, man. Being from the Northwest, not originally, but just coming from there, big Seahawks fan. So love the 12s.
The 12th man.
12th man. It's the lucky number for BYU quarterbacks. Go Cougs. And so, love the number 12.
So tell everyone what you're currently doing with RailPros. I know you're involved with learning development. So share with our listeners and our audience, what exactly does that look like?
Definitely. So it probably takes a little bit of a different form than it would traditionally when you think about learning and development. And so with RailPros, so RailPros is a contractor for the railroad. We provide flagging and staffing services. We provide engineering services. So you need a rail yard designed, or you need a new light rail connection or heavy rail or something like that done. We can help out with that. But I run the part of the business that does the training. And so what that means is we are out there doing training out in the field or online for contractors of the railroad and for railroads themselves, specifically around compliance and safety topics. And so there are a lot of things which are mandated by the FRA and the FTA that should be trained. And we are there to help our clients make sure that they're compliant by making sure all of their people are getting the training that they need. And so I've got a staff that encompasses the business development and selling of training. I've got a team that does the development of the training and a team that does the delivery of the training. And so we're a full service shop end to end, and I'm really happy to be here.
That is very interesting to learn about the railroads. I mean, as a kid growing up, right, I was infatuated with trains and
me too.
Trains move cargo across our country. So what's that been like for you?
Oh, trains are so neat. One of the first jobs I had when I got out of school was working for the Utah Transit Authority. And one of the most salient memories that I have that has stuck with me is when a guy named Randy Welsh took me on a tour of the heavy rail maintenance facility. And I got to see these big old locomotives up close. And even though I was like a mid-20-something-year-old guy, I turned into like an 8-year-old, like instantly. Yeah. I was like, oh, it's choo-choos. And so it was so neat seeing that stuff. And I'm still enamored by trains. And I think it's amazing to be able to work in an industry that is where the engineering is just so vast and big. Yeah. And is so vital to the infrastructure and the transportation of goods and people all around the United States and all North America for that matter. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, my adult son lives near a rail yard. He talks about how he can hear the locomotives and then the house shakes when they go by. So he still loves that. So how did you end up in learning?
Yeah.
I mean, is that something you intentionally sought out, or is it just something that you kind of a door opened and you walked into?
Man, I'd like to see like if we were to poll everybody, like, did you plan on doing what you're doing now? When they're like 40 something years old. And so no, it wasn't something I sought out originally. And I'll give you the really brief story. So originally I wanted to be a doctor. So I started going to BYU with the idea I'm going to be a doctor, taking the anatomy classes, the molecular biology classes, and all that good stuff. And I couldn't get a good enough grade in OChem. So organic chemistry, it's always going to weed people out. And it weeded me out. And I'm like, I might want to start thinking about backup plans. And so I started taking business classes. And I took an organizational behavior class just because it was required. And I got in there, I didn't know what it was, started learning about the subject matter and just loved it. I'm like, I want to be in the part of business that has to do with the people, that has to do with helping people better, work better together, to help organizations work better. I want to do that. So I took that class. I didn't get like an awesome grade. Oddly enough, I got like really good grades in my finance classes. I didn't get as good a grade in this one. But I loved the subject matter, stuck with it, signed on to take a leadership development course, which wasn't a course, is weird. It wasn't a course where it was like, this is a leadership development course for you. It was more just telling you about what leadership development is. Kind of weird. So it just introduced you to the topic, but I loved the professor, and I was able to, take him on as a mentor, and he guided me towards that path of like, oh, if you love this stuff, this is a path you can take. And he pointed me towards learning and development and talent and organizational development. And, I got a job at a construction company right out of college as a training specialist, and the rest is history. So that was my path.
I think organic chemistry weans a lot of people out because I remember my roommate in college, Ken Acker, he wanted to be a doctor, and organic chemistry did not treat him well. So he ended up becoming a physical therapist. So he had to kind of drop it down a little bit there. So organic chemistry is one of those that kind of separates people out of that. So
yeah, that seems pretty universal. It's like they all got together and like had some evil plan or something like that. Evil organic chemistry plan. I don't know. It's crazy.
Hey, you've worked at a diverse group of companies. You mentioned Utah Transit. I know you've worked at Amazon. You worked our relationship started when you were working with a life sciences company in Seattle, and now you're in the railroad. I mean, what are any similarities when you go from those from different companies? I mean, culturally, anything different, anything the same?
I think there's actually a few similarities in how, especially like when it comes to how companies expect their people to treat each other. Like everybody wants their people to treat each other with respect and dignity, right? And so usually, like I was looking through some of the the old websites and stuff, like for Amazon. Amazon doesn't, I don't know if they explicitly mention like treat each other right. And maybe that's kind of, why it's a little bit brutal to work there sometimes. But, for the most part, they expect people to be respectful. So at least when it comes to that stuff, it's all pretty similar. But then depending on like the environment that a company has to operate in, I think that really informs some of the differences that you might see in cultures. Because ultimately, right, culture is just the people.
Yeah.
Like it's not the slogans. As much as you want the slogans to be the culture, like if it was that easy, let's come up with some snazzy slogans and let's slap those on our website and boom, we got culture. It doesn't work that way, unless you've experienced that. I haven't. But, culture is the people. And if the people that you're getting have a different set of priorities than what you're putting on your website, then you're just not going to have the culture that you're looking for, right? And so, anyway, so for like example at, Adaptive, biotech company, they're very much about the science and pushing the envelope forward with science. And so one of their core values was debate openly. And so that was like, that basically meant that from everybody throughout the company, you could debate. A lot of people took that as I have the freedom to argue whatever I want. It wasn't necessarily that. But it was that like, nothing is off limits. Like we can talk about anything as a group, right? At a place like Amazon, think big. Like thinking big, innovation was really important. But here, where I'm at now, at RailPros, safety. Safety is a huge part of the culture. It's the number one thing. Be safe. And so when we're carrying culture of safety and being safe, that's the thing that we're looking at. So I think that to me, like that's the big thing is differences. Is what do you expect the people to do? And if it's to create software and change the world, it's going to be different than, trying to keep millions of people safe as they work in and around the rail.
Do you see the culture of some of the organizations? Some are working at high intensity and some are more relaxed and let's get the job done, move the business forward?
What was that again?
Do you see when you're working at some of the different organizations, for instance,
Yeah.
Amazon and Adaptive and the other
Mhm.
places, some the tempo is very fast moving, and others more to, RailPros, it's more, let's be very deliberate but safe in what we do.
Yeah. I don't know if those things are mutually exclusive. I do feel like there's a need to work fast and safe here
Yeah.
at RailPros, right? At Amazon, it was work at breakneck speed, break stuff, and then sort of figure out what happened. At places like in biotech, of course, you've got to make sure that you're pushing things forward, but you're doing so in a methodical way because you're dealing with technology that takes years and years and years, maybe even decades to develop and perfect. And it's ultimately going to affect people's lives
Yeah.
in like the most existential way. And so um, how you innovate is a little bit more tempered, but still it's like, let's not rest because people's lives depend on this. Right. And I feel that here, like when I think about like why we do what we do at Rail Pros, especially in my group, is that the knowledge and the skills that we're out there trying to teach people is saving lives. Like it's life saving to know where you're supposed to stand, what type of PPE you're supposed to use,
Yeah.
where you should go and not go, who you need to listen to. Those are all things that are going to save people's lives and bring them home at the end of the day. So, in that way, we're working earnestly every day to try to make that happen. But we got to do so in a way that's compliant, that's safe, that is, getting the job done the right way.
Excellent. Hey, I want to jump into some questions around learning and development. And
Yeah.
last week we had my colleagues Tana and Tricia, who lead our leadership GPS curriculum. They talked about there's 5 generations in the
Yeah.
workforce today, and I'm sure that's the same at RailPros. What do you see are some of the differences in terms of ways people in different generations learn today?
Yeah. That's right. 5, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Is this like the first time ever that that's happened?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got the boomers, you got
Yeah,
the millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Y, Gen Z. So, yep.
man. I will self-identify as a millennial. There we go. You can
There you go.
approximate my age based off of that.
I'm with you.
I grew up riding my bike around, leaving the door unlocked on my house, but played Oregon Trail in computer lab.
Yep.
So got a cell phone in college. Anyway, enough reminiscing. Um, the one thing that I think informs how we choose a delivery mechanism based off of like generational stuff more has to do with people's media habits more than how what year they were born. I think to me that probably tells us more. So for example, um, generationally there might be people that prefer to watch linear television. There might be other people who prefer to watch 5-minute things on YouTube or TikTok. I don't know how long TikTok stuff is. I'm before TikTok. I don't do TikTok. But so that kind of informs that, right? So I'll give you an example. So like I grew up in the era of the mixtape, right? You listen to
Yeah.
the you listen to the radio with your
Yeah.
boombox, right? And you listen to the top 8 at 8, and you're
Yep.
ready to go and hit record when you hear the song that you like,
Yeah.
and you're able to piece together a mixtape that's got a mixture of all the things that you like. And preceding that was the album age when it came to listening to music. Right? You just get the album.
Right.
Like this is just a chunk of songs you get, whether you like them or not, right? And you always knew that there's going to be like 4 songs that you like, then there's going to be like 8 songs that were total dogs that you never listened to. And so you just put it on, you listen to the ones you like, and maybe you listen to the whole thing through. But on a mixtape, it's just hit after hit after hit. It's what you like. And so for me, when I think about my media consumption there, and I apply that to how I like to learn, it carries over. Like I don't like to just sit down and just listen to or watch or take a course from beginning to end. I feel the compulsion to skip around and only pick the things I like. or that I
Yeah.
think that I'm going to need to learn. And so I want to have that freedom to skip around. So it's important that if a learner is like me, you give them the freedom to personalize their learning journey, right? If a person is used to consuming things on Netflix, if someone's used to consuming things as sound bites in blogs and things like that, it's important to make sure that you're setting up an ecosystem so that people can do that. One of the more contemporary learning theories that we're starting to work with is the idea that everything's sort of connected. It's connectivism, is that learning is about the connection of different networks or nexuses of information, right? There's blogs, there's articles, there's a website that has some information here, there's a series of instructional videos, and then there's me. Then there's also all the people in my network too. And all these things form a network. And learning occurs as I start to make the connections and links between all these things in my network. And that's the same from person to person. So if you're able to give them a nice wide swath of different things to choose from, the chances are that they're going to pick the path that's best for them. So I don't know, what kind of things have you noticed when it comes to generations and consumption habits?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I look at it's interesting because I had before we came on, Tim. I had a call with someone, and they were asking me about what books are you reading right now, and I'm not a big book reader. I'm more I like to read the newspaper, but I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of podcasts. Right?
Mhm.
I think you
Yeah.
get a lot of good information on podcasts, and
Yep.
and you can pick what you want, and we see with our clients that we work with. The boomers and the millennials, they to a certain degree they still want the actual handout, right? They want the piece of paper and the notebook to write in. And then you get down to some of the younger groups, they want an electronic, right? They want an
Mhm.
iPad, they want a tablet, they want it on
Yeah.
their phone, they want to consume it that way and consume it whenever they want, when they can consume it when they want to, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah. And like people can change too, right? Like one of the we're trying to work on getting incorporating more technology in what we do, because for a long time compliance and safety training was basically you just kind of teach what needs to be taught and then that's
yeah.
it. And we're like, that's just not good enough. Like we want to make sure we can advance the standard a little bit more on this stuff because this is important. We don't need people tuning out. But I was talking to somebody, senior leader in our company, and we were talking about a technology, a simulation technology. And he was like, I remember, you know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, we got this simulator for blah, blah, blah. And it just sat in the basement and collected dust. And, and now it's all the rage. Simulation, like simulating any sort of working situation, simulating maintenance, simulating operating a locomotive. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And even people who may have not liked it 15 years ago are starting to get on board with that mode of delivery. And so people's tastes can change, but I think that, when you look at how people get information, how they buy stuff in their normal life, trying to find ways to approximate their learning journey to that is a really good way to go. Like if you're ever wondering, it's like, well, check that stuff out and then try to make the two as similar as possible.
Is that the simulation? Is that because of the gamification of what's going on with people always playing games, and you can play games on your phone, and is
Yeah,
that
I
you
think
driving that, you think?
I think that's really helping with adoption for sure. For sure there is, and I think that is generational, where there's going to be people, like me that played Call of Duty in college, and then there's people that are younger than me that have been playing, Fortnite and other types of things. That's part of it. I think that the technology has advanced and become more available. I think that that's really important as well. And then there's other factors that are really pragmatic. So, for example, if you were to do like locomotive simulation, um, big train simulator, it can be something that fits on a desktop. It could be something really fancy that fills up a room. We've got clients that have amazing simulators set up to train their people up. And what's really cool from a pragmatic standpoint is that with a simulator, you can program in a curriculum that's going to remain consistent from one learner to the next. You're also able to program in repetition. So where people mess up, or if somebody messes up, you can stop the simulator, back them up, and have them do it again until they get it right. You can't
Right.
do that with a real train. I mean, you
Yeah.
might stop, but you're probably not going to back it up. It's really expensive to operate a train.
Yeah.
And so, and you can put them in dangerous scenarios. I call them edge scenarios, where you might put something on the track in front of them, something you'd never do in real life. You'd maybe put a red flag up there at the end of a long grade, and they're going to have to slow the train down real quick. I mean, there's things like that you can do in that scenario and give them reps on those edge scenarios that you otherwise couldn't do. And so I think pragmatically, simulators and things like that are starting to make a lot of sense in that way too.
How do you measure the success of a training course? Is there a test at the end, or what does success look like when someone completes a course for RailPros?
Yeah, for RailPros, most of our courses are going to have some sort of test at the end, some sort of knowledge assessment. And so, of course, that's one way. And course completion and course pass rates are things that we keep track of for all of our courses. And so, that's one way. We also look at sentiment. It's interesting. Like, I call it sentiment because I know that when you think about learning and Kirkpatrick model of evaluation, you think of reaction as level one. Maybe it's not all that valid or useful. And there's definitely pluses and minuses to it. Like, in my opinion, it's still useful for judging learner experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As far as judging the efficacy of the learning, sure, like it's not that great, but their experience is a part of all of that. And especially when we're trying to sell the training, customer experience is really important. And so we're looking at that. And we're currently working on trying to do more follow-up surveys and things like that to make sure that what we're teaching them is actually sticking with them. So follow-up surveys. But those are two of the main things that we look at right now. And because I also with where I'm at with RailPros in terms of having a commercial organization, we're looking at all the financials as well, of course. And to be honest with you, I think that that's one piece that if I were to go back and do learning that was internal, I would learn a lot more about the financials and bring a lot more of that in when I'm looking at judging the efficacy of the programs and the efficiency of the programs that I'd be running, internally for, say, like an HR organization. So, yeah, those are what I'm looking at.
Let's talk about data. Every company has data, all kinds of
Yeah.
data. How does learning and development, how do you harness data that you're gathering and utilize that to meet the needs of your customers?
Yeah. I think a good example, so at the biotech company that I worked with, data was really powerful in helping us do what we needed to do. We did an annual engagement survey, which is great. And really what that was to me is that was a mountain of great data. That was a lot of insights that we could do a lot of things with. And one of the needs that we found was the need for more skill development for mid-level managers when it came to certain communication skills.
Wow.
And so it was like pinpointed. This is what we need to look at. Guess what my training programs were designed around? Trying to help mid-level managers develop more communication skills, specifically the communication skills that we were looking at. And so I think that we had that top metric, right? That was our big lagging metric that we were looking at. Everything else was like good to track, right? The process. And so we would do, for that particular program, we would do a self-assessment at the start before they even took a course, because everything was done in a series. So before they started a series for a particular type of training module, we would do a self-assessment where they would self-assess on how confident they were, how ready they felt for having like difficult conversations or something like that. And we do that. Then we do a little bit of a knowledge assessment as well beforehand, and then we'd run them through the course, and then we would do the same things at the end. And so by looking at the before and afters, we were able to see, was the curriculum as effective as we wanted it to be?
Yeah.
So is it hitting the right marks? Was it moving the needle in the right spots? And where it wasn't, we could make tweaks. So we could tweak the curriculum by looking at sentiment throughout. We could tweak parts of the experience, which extends beyond just the courseware. It goes into how hard was it to register? How was the follow-up? Was it easy to find time off? Things like that.
Yeah.
And then, we'd have all that. And then after all that was over, we would do a pulse with that group to see if, we were able to move those engagement scores up over a period of time. And at the place where I was working, we were able to see a steady increase over time. So we can make that connection that we were moving the needle in the right direction by doing the things we need to do. So, and that was one example of is a pretty comprehensive, pretty time-intensive thing. I wouldn't suggest that everybody go out and do that for every single learning program because it's really hard to do. But even just starting with pre and post surveys on how they feel they're doing with certain things, and then get them afterwards, and then maybe do some follow-up surveys, that could be a way of seeing if that curriculum is hitting the right spot. And then I think that sentiment or reaction is just standard. You just need to start doing that right now.
Yeah.
And using that as a way to improve the learning experience, because you'll gain insights into how the experience is going to. And then all the ROI stuff and all that afterwards, you can do that, but I would say do it sparingly. Do as much as management needs you to do to justify the expense.
One of the things that we do at Competitive Solutions, our leadership GPS curriculum, it's a 10-month curriculum, and at the start there's a 360-degree assessment. Nice. Right? So you get feedback on where are you at this moment in time from your, yourself and your peers and your leader. And then at the end of that 10 months, there's a brief out where each participant needs to brief out and say, here's where I was, but here are the skills that I've developed to kind of help me close that gap. And it's very transformational when you've got employees that are standing before, the C-suite leaders and talking about the transformation. And that's the part of the ROI is demonstrating to leaders, you invested in me and here's what I got out of it. Here's what I'm going to be doing differently to help control the business and move it forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love that.
Let's talk about how do you stay current on trends? What's your method in terms of staying up to date on different learnings, different technologies out there? How do you do that, Tim?
Well, Seth, I set the trends, so I love checking out what's going on LinkedIn just on a daily basis. There's usually some interesting stuff out there. Checking out what y'all are saying, checking out what other groups are saying, and so I make it a point in my leader standard work to say check my socials, which means check LinkedIn and see what's going on, because that's kind of the pulse of what's happening right now. So there's that. I think that there's some decent trade publications that I like to look into. ATD puts out some good stuff. Training Magazine does as well. There's a few places I used to work at. I used to work at a company called Allen.com. They're I think that I would say they're thought leaders when it comes to talking about what's new and what's hip. Mm-hmm. And so I like to check. They've got a blog. They've got a website that I check out from time to time. But I think that what I try to do is stay connected to people.
Yeah.
Like people who I know, who I respect, and talk to them as much as I can about, what's going on. That's typically what I like to do. I typically don't go to a lot of conferences and stuff, to be honest with you. But a lot of my folks do.
Yeah, leader standard work. We had a podcast on that. I think it was episode 7. Von Schopp at Haviland Enterprises talked about stuff. If anyone's interested in leader standard work, we got a great podcast on that.
Check it out.
Yeah, check it out. What what's one characteristic or trait you look for in a good leader that's important to you?
Oh man, I think so. Like I think that kind of depends on what that leader is going to be doing.
Okay.
Right? Like, what's the mission?
Right.
And there could be a lot of different missions, but I'll just break it down to like two categories. One is, do I need like a revolutionary leader, like someone who's like their mission is novel and new, like they're going to be like, establishing new frontiers, or is it more of an evolutionary leader, like somebody who is going to just be evolving the business and moving it forward, but doesn't necessarily like be the one that like fights to establish a beachfront or something like that. So for someone who is, I would say, like a revolutionary leader, I think that it's really important for them to be able to create and articulate a clear vision of what they're trying to do, no matter what it is, like no
Right.
matter what size of whatever they're doing, right? They just need to show that they've got such a solid grasp of the mission at hand that they can clearly just articulate it over to you, and now you've got it too, and you've caught the vision. So they're excellent at developing clarity and energy around an idea that's novel and new. So for me, that's really important, and to me, that's something that can be picked up on. Like, say, if I was interviewing a leader for a leadership position or something like that. But not every leader needs to be revolutionary. Some can be more evolutionary, and I think that for that particular group of leaders, the ability to quickly learn and adapt is really important. Because even though it's an evolutionary style, evolution is guided by adaptation, and so if you can't adapt, you go extinct. And so
Mhm.
the ability to quickly learn and adapt and move, um, probably a disposition to want to closely collaborate with others and get people on board is also really important. But yeah, that's kind of how I think about it when it comes to those.
I
And
like it.
those two things, if I could see those two things in a leader, then we might be onto something.
What brings fulfillment, satisfaction to you and your team?
Oh, getting the job done right.
Okay.
Getting the job done right. Um, yeah, I think that's the one. Like, when we know that a client is not just happy with what we've done, but like over the top happy, like we've exceeded their expectations. Because that means that we're a job done right for us means that we've made something safer,
Yeah.
and that's really important to us. We're working with a big client right now, um, and my members of my team have just done such an amazing job with this client, to where they're grasping and expanding the vision of what they think is possible in the partnership that they've got with us, which just means that they're able to use their resources to bring to bear new technologies, new different methods for doing stuff. And to me, that is incredibly satisfying to see that because of the solid work that we've done in exceeding this client's expectations, that they're like, well, what more can we do? Like, what else is possible? Take us there. Like, we want to expand our vision, and to me, that's just really cool.
That's great. No, like, look, if the client's happy, you're going to be happy, right? Knowing you and your team, that the
Yeah,
hard work, the efforts, the late hours, the emails, if it delivered a quality product that the client's happy with, that's what it's about, right?
that's what
I
it's
mean,
about.
it's the same with us, right? When we go out and when we engage with a client around leadership GPS or process-based leadership or visual on our software, right? If the client is happy and they're seeing it move the business forward and make change, that's really what you want
Yeah.
with that. So, hey, we got a question that came in. This is from Michelle in Atlanta. She is asking, what advice would you give to someone seeking a role or career in the learning development space?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, hmm. Yeah, this is interesting because I've had people ask me this before, and it's like it's different for every person. because it has to do, it's a very personal thing. And so when looking back on my journey, um, I started in learning and development, and then I went back to school and got my MBA. And so many people in the MBA program went on into operations and finance, and I stuck with learning and development. Right. Sometimes it's a marginalized function. Even more so, like 18 years ago, it was like a luxury, or like you needed to do it because of compliance. Right.
Right.
It wasn't like everybody's got one of these departments the way that everybody's got an accounting department. And so it's not a vanity thing, but it is a little bit of a luxury to have someone who's an expert at learning and development on your team. And so even though I had an opportunity to switch disciplines, I stuck with this because I think of learning as a unique and special part of the human experience. And as a learning and development professional, I get to play a part in that. I get to play a part in what makes us unique as human beings. Like, sure, like there's probably blue whales that can somehow communicate to their offspring, like this is how you get from Alaska to Hawaii, whatever. Okay. But, we're so good at transmitting learning from one person to the next that we've been to the moon, that we've sent satellites outside of our solar system, that we've been able to split atoms. And so we've done a lot with what we're able to do. And so for me, when I'm happiest, I'm learning. It's like breathing.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to learn. And so for me to share that passion with other people, and to help them have those aha moments brings me joy. It refills my batteries.
Okay.
So if that's you, then learning is probably the right path. I think that you've got to love helping people learn stuff, helping people grow, because that's the one way you're definitely going to stick with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's the phrase? If you're not growing, you're dying, right? So.
I thought it was if not first, you're last.
Oh yeah. There you go. There you go. The famous Ricky Bobby, right?
Famous Ricky Bobby.
The famous Ricky Bobby. Hey, as we start to wrap things up, Tim, and I really appreciate you jumping on, and everyone that's on here, I really encourage you to go out to LinkedIn and connect with Tim on LinkedIn. Tim Newhard. He's got some great content out there that he and his team have put together. But I want to close with this, Tim. What did you learn when you were in life science technology? That group was creating life-saving applications for people, and now in your railroad industry, what did you take from the life science space that you brought over to the railroad area, the railroad industry, from a learning takeaway?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when I tell people my work history and now I'm working in rail, they're like, "Whoa, that's stretch." Like, what
Right.
what
Right.
happened to you? Uh, and so, but actually, when it comes to learning development, it's a fairly fungible skill set. Like, you can apply it all over the place if you know how to do it. And but there are definitely some specific things that I picked up along the way that I hope to bring in. It's my goal to advance the standard in this
Yep.
industry, right? It's there are some cases where we're still doing compliance training on PDFs, and to me that's just completely unacceptable. That is not learning. That's just not learning. Nobody's learning anything, and for the stuff that we're teaching people, it's really important that they learn stuff. And so for me, stuff that I want to bring over and that we started to bring over is an emphasis on new technologies. I think that's the biggest thing. We're already in the process of creating VR environments, um,
Virtual reality.
virtual reality
Okay.
for clients. So, imagine if you were trying to teach someone to do track inspection. You could put them out there and present them with a limited number of scenarios, or you can create a virtual reality environment where now you can give them unlimited scenarios that they're going to have to try to go through. there's a lot more you can teach people. There's a lot more repetition. There's a lot more things they can see. And I want to be able to push the envelope forward with that. I think also, the quality of media that we were able to create, like at Amazon or in life sciences, was great because we had pretty good budgets. And I want to bring some of that media creation clout to this group. We create some really nice media already. So really trying to push the bar higher is going to be tough to do. But incorporating more of that media into our learning, really upping the standard of the types of e-learnings that we're putting together, what the classroom experience is going to be like, simulation, things like that. They're all things that we want to look into as a way to continue to try to evolve and push the envelope forward. There's also different ways that people learn. There's one of the coolest things that I was able to do in life sciences was I was able to put together these really small informal learning groups. We gave them a really complicated name that sounded scientific. It wasn't based in science at all, it just sounded scientific. They're called recombinators. And so we would get our recombinators together once or twice a month, and there'd just be a cohort of leaders, like 8 of them together. They would be working together, they would be socializing, they'd be teaching each other. And they were so successful that they became self-sustaining, just sort of worked on their own. That type of social learning, I think, has applications everywhere, including
Absolutely.
here. And so, that's some of the things we want to do moving forward, but it's exciting to kind of push it forward into new frontiers.
That's awesome, Tim. And listen, thank you very much for your time. I don't want to put you on the spot. Any closing comments, any words of wisdom you want to share before I close this out?
No, I don't think so. We had a really nice conversation, Seth. I mean, it's been such a pleasure knowing you over the last few years. I think you guys just do incredible stuff. Incredible stuff. Some of the work that we've been able to do with your people is stuff that was beyond what I'm able to do, and I think of myself as a fairly capable person. But just the spirit of collaboration and being able to do stuff together with your team is real fantastic. So wish you guys the best of luck.
We appreciate it, Tim. And you and your team, right? You're creating safe work environments so that the commerce of America can move across, right? And so with packaging and chemicals and cars and all kinds of things get transported on the railroad, it's because you and your team are creating the curriculum and learnings to create a safe environment for everyone. So we appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today on the Pulse of High Performance podcast, sponsored by Vision One. This was episode 12. Thank you for joining us. We hope you found value and good takeaways in it. Next week is Thanksgiving. It's hard to believe that a week from today will be Thanksgiving. So there will not be a podcast next week, but we will be starting the podcast back in in December. And we look forward to having everyone join back in. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Safe travels wherever you go. Enjoy time with your friends and family. And Tim, I'm thankful for you that you